A very pleasant welcome to you from Cable Spotlight on TV 66. I am Chuck Gagliardi, and with me today is one of my good friends in this crazy business of broadcasting. Actually, my neighbor, or South Philadelphia neighbor, and someone that's graced our show 3 times already. The man with the best set of pipes in the business, the best vocal quality I've ever heard. This is Ed Cunningham.
Keep going, Chuck. I'm not done listening to this yet. Keep going.
Ed Cunningham from WHYY TV 12 Public Broadcasting in Philadelphia. A great man and a wonderful producer of shows. Terrific TV host, and I really mean that. My friend, we've become pretty good friends the last couple of years here. It's great to see you again. How you doing?
Thank you, Chuck. Always a pleasure to be back. Time number 4, Carol Erickson. Let's see, she's working on 7 or 8.
I think, yeah,
right.
Larry McMullen is up there, too. And
so I have to keep coming back. I have to think of new things to come over and tell you about all the time so I can catch up to them.
Well, even some of the old things you could tell us about are pretty good, too. But,
well, that's what I specialize in.
What new things are happening in the life of Ed Cunningham at this particular time?
I'll tell you, producing continues to be the thing over at Channel 12 that I enjoy most. I do the announcing for them, as you know. I've been doing that for years, and that's terrific. I produce the pledge drives. And I know that I've said this before, when people have the urge to throw the shoe at the screen, I'm the guy they should be aiming at, because I'm the guy who produces the pledge drives, and that's terrific too, and I like appearing on those. But what I have been doing for the last 5 or 6 years, and that is producing historical documentaries about our town, is certainly what has given me the most satisfaction, the most fun, the most joy. That's what we hope to continue to do in the future. We have our very latest one, of course, that we aired last year, and that you know because you were at the station to help us raise money for, was South Philly Italian Style. And I'll tell you, they love me in South Philly. I get more invitations to dinner out of that show than anything you can think of. I never ate better in my life than when I was producing that show, the most hospitable people in the world.
You should get that dinner, because it was a terrific program, and I was very much happy and enthralled to be part of that, even in a small way, and it was great to be up there helping with the pledge drives that particular night back in March.
He helped us raise money for the show, and he also, because as we all know, Chuck Gagliardi knows everyone in the world, helped us to find Bobby Rydell, who turned out to be a superb host for our show, and it was all because of Chuck that it happened. So I want you to know how important.
I don't know if we ever mentioned on the show, but when I phoned Bobby that particular day after we had talked, you and I had talked, and I said, Ed had mentioned, well, geez, I'd like to possibly get somebody from the area to do narration on this. And I said, well, Ed, how about you? He said, no. He said, I really want to get somebody that's in the community and that
help to be Italian.
Help to be Italian and things like that. And I said, well, Bobby Rydell may be a good person. And Ed said, well, can you get Bobby? And I said, well, the best I could do is maybe telephone Bobby, because Bobby's been a guest on the program and been a longtime friend of the family. My brother played guitar with him many, many years ago when they were traveling around during those golden days of rock and roll. And I said, let me give Bobby a call. And when I first called Bobby, Bobby was very reluctant to do this, not because Ed was involved or it was public broadcasting, but he just never saw himself as being the person that could do the narration on this thing. But it turned out to be a great.
Yeah, it's an unusual thought, but obviously he's knowledgeable about the area, needless to say. And I just had a hunch about him, and he did not disappoint. He was terrific.
Was he easy to work with?
He sure was. I mean, he, of course, the only problem was the weather. If you've seen the show and you know the beginning and end of the program, in which he introduces the show from his old boyhood home on 11th Street in South Philly. It all calls for outdoor stuff, and the first day we had scheduled to shoot, it just poured out of the heavens, more than I can ever remember. And we sat in his old house with the gentleman who lives there today, having coffee, waiting maybe for the skies to stop opening up. It never did happen, so we had to postpone the shoot that day. We had a beautiful day. For the second day we wanted to do it, and it was fine. The only problem is they were ripping up the streets around 11th and Wolf there, 11th and Porter, and every 10 minutes or so we had to go down the street and ask the gentleman from the Philadelphia Streets Department to turn off the backhoes to keep everything quiet for a while. And they were actually very helpful and very cooperative, but there was one thing after another. That's the beautiful thing about doing something in the studio, of course. You always have that kind of control. When you go out in the streets, it looks great, but boy, oh boy, you never know what you're going to run into. Besides
the streets being torn up and the weather, were there other snafus that delayed the videotaping of South Philly Italian Style?
Well, no, I mean, that was the main problem that we ran into, and happily, with the cooperation of the police department who came around, the policeman who made sure that the traffic stayed away, had his picture taken with Bobby Rydell, and the folks from the cafe across the street made sure everything was cool around there. And we had one shot we wanted to do with Bobby I guess it was on Porter, and there was a gentleman painting his steps in the background. And we had to say, sir, would you mind stopping painting your steps for a couple of hours? But he said, I've just started. I've gotten half done. I said, I'll get you a copy of the show. He said, cool. As soon as the show was done, I made sure I delivered him a copy, and he was very helpful.
And it was a terrific program, and again, I've commended you in the past, things that we've done together, and certainly I will commend you again today. I would hope that there's going to be a sequel. Is there going to be one?
Well, I don't know. There may be. The thing is, we're thinking also of doing stories of other ethnic groups in Philadelphia. I think the next one that we've been talking about is a possible history of the Jewish community.
Right.
Very strong Jewish community right here in South Philadelphia, as a matter of fact. One of the largest in the country, as a matter of fact, and that may be a story that people don't know that well. So hopefully we will have the opportunity to tell a very interesting story about that, too. One thing, one dream that I have is that I'd like to do things that are perhaps even more in-depth about the history of our Delaware Valley. I think one of the finest series we have ever had on public television is The American Experience, which you may have seen, telling the story of momentous events in our country's history, really, for the past 200 years. And it's been my dream for the last couple of years to see if we could do a version from Philadelphia in the Delaware Valley of significant events in our own history.
Right.
So in fact, we've gotten to the point now where we have a proposal out there, and our marketing department is hard at work as we speak, approaching corporations, foundations, so forth, looking for the funding that we need, and we really can't do it from internal resources. But if we can get a company out there interested in providing the funding, then we can examine some stories about life in the Delaware Valley that perhaps we can tell more in depth of all the warts and all of what the experience of the Delaware Valley, the good and the bad.
With the South Philly Italian style, was the corporate funding also an integral
There
part?
was corporate. We did that mostly from our own internal resources. But yes, we did get some help from Methodist Hospital. When you see the show, you will see their funder, for which we were very grateful. This is something, this is a plan that I have that's perhaps more large scale, and so we do need that funding up front. So what I do want to say, by the way, if anybody watching the program has any ideas of stories that they would like to see on our own version of the American Experience, our own Philadelphia History Project, we've got a list of about 25 or 30 topics, everything from the Academy of Music and City Hall to profiles of some famous Philadelphians, the story of the first computer that was ever built in the world that was done at the University of Pennsylvania, and the list goes on and on. But I would love to hear suggestions from your viewers about other topics that we might consider covering. A suggestion was just made to us about telling the story of the old Fairmount Waterworks. If you ever pass by the East or West River Drive and you see some of those old buildings near Boathouse Row, those were the original waterworks. And the suggestion has been made that we tell that history. So the possibilities of of the stories that we can tell about life in the Delaware Valley, I think, go on and on. And so I'd like to use the American Experience as kind of our example of what can be done by telling our own stories to our own citizens.
How much verbal communication do you get, either telephone or written letters, about shows that you've done or even shows that people would like to see?
Well, we get plenty. Of course, the way things have worked for us recently is that the most instant feedback we get, of course, is with the pledges that we get.
Sure.
The programs that I have produced have been in my role as the producer of fundraising for public television. So they're all very feel-good stories, and they're all marvelous. But that's where I want to branch out and do some other kinds of things as well. But the instant reaction we get with the pledges is always a very interesting thing. And also it can be very nerve-wracking. As you remember when you were with us last year for South Philly Italian Style, it's to me, it's probably the most nerve-wracking thing next to stand-up comedy. You know instantly whether you're a success or not. If a comedian gets up there and nobody's laughing at the jokes, well, the material's no good. If you get up there and you've produced a little show and nobody calls and makes a pledge, you know, oh boy, well, maybe this didn't work. Maybe the last year of my life was for naught. So it can be a little frightening. but so far it's worked out very well.
I think it's worked out terrifically. In fact, we're going to talk about that in our next segment, just real briefly. And I also want to mention some of the other great projects that Ed has brought to the forefront of Channel 12 to the wonderful Delaware Valley viewing audience. He's a wonderful guy here and a terrific, innovative producer of TV programs. Ed Cunningham from Channel 12, our special guest, and he and I will return on Cable Spotlight right after these words. Stay with us.
There's no way he's out. It's impossible.
Actually, Coach, it's not. See, Jimmy had to travel a distance of 90 feet. He reached an average speed of 15 miles.
If academic standards are important to you, call 1-800-38-BE-SMART for a free booklet and be a big league parent.
My nose.
Ed Cunningham from WHYY TV 12 is our special guest today. Ed has produced so many wonderful programs at Channel 12. Things that aren't there anymore, more things that aren't there anymore, right? And then you had the Philadelphia Sports Legends.
Yep.
And South Philly Italian Style. Am I missing anything?
And we did a national production, Remember When, which was seen around the country. It was really gratifying. The reason for that production was that word travels fast in public television circles, and when we had our initial success with things that aren't there anymore, the word got around to the PBS system all over the country. And as proud as I am of Remember When, of the opportunity that we got to produce a show for the nationwide audience, I'm even prouder of the fact that individual public television stations all over the country have done their own versions of these programs based on the history of their own communities after seeing the good results that we had here from our viewers. And so people all over the country, based on the good example that our viewers gave us, are getting to find out more about the history of their own communities because of these productions that the individual public television stations are doing.
You created a very nice monster, in other words. That's what
We
you did,
have
right?
indeed.
And I want to tell you, when I was, excuse me, up at Channel 12 in March of 1997, I guess it was, last year, I had a great time that evening. There was this adrenaline rush you get being on live television with these pledge drives, but I never realized it was so complicated. And I know you have to do this all the time, and I am very impressed that you can make this look so interesting every time you're on there, because it is, for me, it was well, first time experience, and it was a novel thing, but I know for you it's kind of redundant, time in, time out, but you make it look so easy and you do so well with that.
Well, it's interesting, you know, we're doing this, I don't know what your shelf life of this program, but we're doing this at the end of January, and we have a March fundraiser coming up, and I've never gotten around. I'd say we average, let's say we average for a low figure, 15 breaks, pledge breaks, every day we do live. I'd say it's probably closer to 20. Let's say 20, and we have 16 days in a March pledge drive. Well, you get the impression that there's over 300 breaks that you do in the average March pledge drive. And maybe there are a few times when it might seem just the slightest bit redundant when you're doing it after a while, but you try to stay fresh and try to stay focused and persuasive to the viewers. But I must tell you that one of the reasons it does look as good as it does is a very talented crew. The directors, our technical guys and women, the men and women are absolutely first rate. And we've had people come to the station and say to us, my word, if we have a guest coming in from another station, I don't think I've ever looked this good before in my life. And we thank our lighting guys and our camera guys, all the people who make it look good. That's a very important element. They're always kind of the unsung people, because if you see a television production, let's say like South Philly Italian Style, you'll run credits. On the pledge drives, we don't. But be advised that all the people behind the scenes are doing an absolutely first-rate job of making live local productions look good.
It was nice meeting Patrick Stoner up there, a wonderful guy. And,
you have to have him on sometime.
You know,
not as many times as me, though.
You've read my mind, because I was just going to bring that up. I watched Patrick do a terrific interview with Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro from the new movie Wag the Dog.
That's from his little short series called Flicks.
Terrific interviewer, he really is. And I'd love to turn the tables on him, so maybe you can persuade him to
just remember now, he and I have an unspoken sibling rivalry going on over there, because we've been doing, we're about the same age, we've been doing the pledge drives for the same amount of time, so don't you let him get ahead of me, Chuck Gagliardi.
No, I won't. I
want to be at least one step ahead of him.
We mentioned 5 major projects. It's almost like giving birth to 5 different children. Which among those 5 is your favorite project?
Oh, now there's boy, that's the first time I've been asked that. I don't know. I guess maybe the original one, because it had that virtue of being The first one that we had thought of, and it was fresh and new, and you got to, I suppose, to choose the very best, the very #1 topics, things like the trolley cars, of course, and the gimbals and lifts and the Thanksgiving Day parade, and all of those wonderful things, Willow Grove Park. So in that sense, and I think it was such a wonderful surprise when we realized, when we had our first pledge break the night that we had that on, what an impact this was making. It was truly a very exciting experience. So like many other things in life that you could mention, perhaps that first time can never be equaled. But they've all been wonderful. I certainly love doing sports and living in South Philly as I do, and being an adjunct member of the Italian-American community down there, if only by association with my wife, Ellie.
The wonderful Ellie.
Oh, yes.
It's a good lady.
Great lady.
Really is.
That was absolutely a labor of love. So they're all great in their own way, but maybe that first time is #1.
Do we have more things that aren't there anymore in the future?
Well, yes, there's no doubt that we're going to be doing them. And actually, we've been in contact with Penn State University about collaborating with them on a story of Penn State, which is very much still there. But they would like to do a history of their university. So there's still some I's to be dotted and T's crossed, but hopefully we will collaborate with them on doing that. And actually, I should mention, even aside from the programming area, our building that we currently sit in is going to be, within the next several months, actually, something that's not going to be there anymore, because actually we're going to tear it down in stages and build up a new building. You should be aware, and I'm sure some people are, that the building that we sit on, which is situated right between the Federal Reserve Bank on one side and the College of Physicians on the other, on 6th and Race, it's a building that was meant to stand for about 1 year, namely the Old Living History Center, which they put up over 20 years ago for the bicentennial. And we managed to get a wonderful deal with the city of Philadelphia to get that for $1 a year. But it's still their property, and it's still something that we've been kind of holding up with baling wire for the past 15 to 20 years since we have been in there. So now we're in a capital campaign that you'll be hearing more about in the next several months. And the main idea of that is to tear down the old structure, put up a new one
at the
on the
same
same site.
Okay.
Yeah, and what's going to be happening is we're going to be backing up all the people little by little while the bulldozers come in, knock down one part of the building. We're going to be working in another, kind of like that. We're hoping a bulldozer doesn't come through the wall and hit us. And they're going to be doing in stages. And then while we're in the last part of the building, they'll be putting up the first part of the next one. The idea there, by the way, is #1, to have a building that is looking toward the 21st century, including all the very latest in technology with the internet and with digital television on the way, as we all know, and with CD-ROMs and all of that kind of thing. This is a building that's going to be put up with that thought in mind. So it's kind of a 3-part capital campaign that we're in now. Part of it for the building, part of it for the technology that will go into the building, and a third part for a program fund to make sure that we've got the wherewithal to produce and acquire programming for the future.
Are these national funds that help here, or is this strictly local fundraising?
It's mostly local fundraising. We're going to foundations, we're going to individuals. It's mostly foundations and individuals. As I say, you'll be hearing more about it in coming months. It's been kind of in the quiet campaign stage for the last couple of years, but we're going to be making a big noise about it soon.
The facility there at TV12 was actually used not only for the shows that are produced there, but also Bill Cosby was doing the old You Bet Your Life show there. Right?
And that is a way that in the face of federal budget cutbacks that we have endured in recent years, our facilities leasing program has been a way for us to have some income.
Right.
And that was certainly one example. Unfortunately, the show lasted only 1 year, which we were sad about, because if the show had caught on a little bit more in the syndication, perhaps Bill would have been there still, and we'd still be getting the income from leasing the facilities to his production company.
Ed, will this production house aspect continue when the new campaign
That certainly is the plan, yes. There will be opportunities for other people to come in, and, you know, we have to be nimble.
Sure.
We have to be imaginative in the way we use our facilities, not only for ourselves, but for others who can make use of them. We use them for corporations who do uplinking and downlinking for conferences with their colleagues all around the country. We've got the technology that they can use, and we put that into good use.
Right. Well, okay, I'm going to hold it here. We're going to come back with our third segment, because I want to talk to Ed about some of the things that he used to do in the past that he's not doing nowadays, like the Mummers Parade. I want to find out if he's going to get back there for the 1999 telecast, and also some of the other PBS projects that he likes that he hasn't been involved in, okay? So that should be interesting conversation between Ed and me right after these words, so stay with us, okay?
What if you had to choose between a flower and an elephant? What would you choose? What if you had to decide between a 100-year-old tree and a 1,000,000-year-old beach? Could you choose between drinking clean water or breathing clean air? Now you can choose all these things. EarthShare, the world's leading environmental groups working together. It's one choice we can all live with.
The great veteran, I hate to use that word veteran because it connotes almost a kind of like older person, but I mean really the great veteran of Philadelphia broadcasting. Ed Cunningham is our special guest today, and
I don't not mind being known as a veteran.
Ed, you really are one of the most
your
recognizable
stripes when you do that.
One of the most recognizable faces and voices in the community, and I think that's a real credit to the polish and professionalism that you've exhibited on the air through so many different media in your many years in this town.
That's why I come here. He always builds me up so much, and then when I go back to the station, they just, they bring me back.
I only say truthful things about my very special guest, but you were a fixture on the Mummers telecast the last few years, and ironically, I ran into Ed on New Year's Day, and Ed was you're working out at the facility.
I was going over to the gym, and I said, hey, wait.
I said, Ed, what are you doing here? You should be out there telecasting this Mummers Parade, doing some announcing there, but why not the 1998 telecast?
Well, just to give you a brief history of this whole saga, the saga at least as far as I'm concerned, back in '92, the January '92 parade, as you may remember, the telecast of that parade was very much an 11th hour deal.
Yeah.
The Mummers were unable to come to a deal with the commercial stations in Philadelphia. So, I mean, I guess about 10 days before New Year's, they came to Channel 12 and they said, hey, would you be interested? And we formed a little coalition. We got some help from the local cable companies. And we found a very nice production outfit called Corsa, which is headquartered out in Manayunk. And we kind of put it all together. I mean, it's almost like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney putting together a show, kind of, hey, we got a studio, we got cameras, we got bumpers, let's put on a show. And that's exactly what we did. And I had the wonderful pleasure at the last minute to be assigned to co-host the parade with Mike Strug, who's a veteran of these things, just a great guy, and I was certainly glad to have him with me because he knows his stuff as far as the Mummers go. So anyway, we just had a total blast doing that on January 1992. Well, much to my pleasant surprise, as the year went on, I got a call from Corsa, which was still producing the parade, this time, and they went around to a couple of states, Channel 3, Channel 17. They said, look, would you like to come back and help us broadcast the parade again? And I was amazed and delighted, and of course I accepted. Yeah. And so I took a little hiatus from my normal Channel 12 duties for the next, 5 years, 93 through 97, to do the parade with them. Now, what happened was their 5-year contract was not renewed this year, and as far as I understand, Channel 17 took on the production on its own. And as one might understand and realize, that they certainly wanted to highlight their own staff, of course, and that's what they did. So I certainly did miss having the opportunity to do the parade because it is one of the most fun things that any broadcaster can do. Having these wonderful Mummers marching right up to you because our booth is right there next to the reviewing stand, so they are coming up. And we're seeing everything on the street, and it was nice to be in the warmth of the booth, too, Chuck. Let me tell you, while some of my colleagues were shivering out in the street getting the interviews.
Very cold this past New Year's Day,
and they come to you, would you like a little Coke or coffee, Mr. Cunningham? It was very nice. So anyway, it was exciting. Talk about that adrenaline rush that you spoke of earlier. Sure. Doing something like that is absolutely one of the most fun things that I have ever done. So maybe I'll get a chance to do it again sometime.
We have to call Channel 17 and write to them and tell them to get Ed Cunningham back on the telecast. I missed you this year in the parade. I really did.
Thank you.
All right. PBS has done so many great projects through the years. I thoroughly enjoyed the Three Tenors, both shows, and there's going to be a third one this year, too, right?
Oh, yes. Well, it was the funny thing about the Three Tenors when they first came on back in March of 1991. It was obviously, as you know, at that time, a unique event. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the human interest story behind it was so poignant in that Jose Carreras, one of the three tenors, had nearly died in the previous year from leukemia. He had contracted the dread disease of leukemia, and he was very ill, and he said, you know, if I get well, I would love to sing with Pavarotti and Domingo on stage. And then, you know, happily, thank God, he was nursed back to health, and they fulfilled that dream with him, and what a setting it was for the 1990 World Cup in Rome, and they sang at the baths of Caracalla, the ancient Roman ruins.
Great concert.
So it was the most wonderful, imaginative setting you can think. Three of the greatest tenors in the world.
Zubin Mehta was
Zubin Mehta conducting, and it was something that had all the elements of a program for the ages.
Right.
Well, of course, what we didn't realize was, and as so often happens in television, as you know, once that became such a runaway success, they had to do it again. So they did it in 1994 again in Los Angeles at Dodger Stadium. And in fact, our very own from our staff, Willow Carey, was the co-host of that with Itzhak Perlman out in California. They did that, and now the next thing you know, it's the three tenors in Hoboken, you know, and they're just all over the place. So yes, they will be doing it again this year, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to broadcast it.
Ed, has that been the greatest fundraiser for public broadcasting through the years?
For public broadcasting in general?
Right.
No. I'll tell you what finally eclipsed it. Actually, my show eclipsed it.
Really?
Well, locally. I should say
okay.
locally.
Yeah. That's the South Philly Italian style?
More, things that aren't there
Things that aren't
anymore.
there, okay.
That and South Philly Italian style was actually right around the same amount.
Right.
But there was one other thing for public television all over the country that blew us all away, and that was Les Miserables.
Okay.
2 years ago, March 1996. We've never seen anything quite like that.
So we're all
I
the people
can't
that played,
imagine that we'll see anything like that again. I can't. I wish I had that figure with me. I know the amount of money was nearly, it was something like $388,000 we earned in one night around that show when it premiered in March of 1996. That was one that really caught people's imaginations. And then we were able to make the point that that's not the sort of thing you can see on commercial television. It's wonderful, but you can't see it anywhere else.
Is that the show where all the different actors played Valjean?
That's
sang
right.
At the end?
We had the what was it, the 16 Jean Valjeans
Terrific
from
program.
all over the world who came on.
I have 60 seconds. One quick question. What has been your favorite PBS show through the years that you didn't produce?
That I didn't produce? Well, there is a series called The Ascent of Man that I remember from 20 years ago, hosted by Jacob Bronowski, talking about how civilization has developed over the last several thousand years and how we have gotten to the point in human culture that we have now. And the reason I say that is there's talk about bringing that back. And I urge you, if it is on again, to check it out because it will knock your socks off.
We never did talk about your new manager down there, Bill Marazzo.
Oh,
hopefully,
yes, and I know you got to sign off, but I was talking to them today about this, and they said you got to have Bill Marazzo on because there's a man with ideas. You're going to get him in. He's
Well, bring
great.
him in and bring Patrick down, too. We'll do a nice panel discussion that day. How's that, okay?
Boy, that should be fun.
Ed, we got to get you back for show number 5, too, by yourself, and I'd love to have the other gentleman here, but we're definitely going to get you back down and do another show.
I got to stay ahead of it.
You're always a great guest, a very articulate and wonderful, personable guest for us, okay? Thanks for being my friend, too. I appreciate that very, very much, okay?
All right, man.
A real good friend, and I do mean friend, Ed Cunningham from WHYY TV 12. Support public broadcasting. Ed's a great guy. It's a great entity in this town, great programming, and thanks for watching today. We got to run. We're late. God bless, and take care, and thanks for watching here.